when we feel comfortable with who we are, when we feel that we can love openly and love deeply, and we can allow ourselves to be our most authentic self, that's when the magic happens.
Let's go, young authors, hey, let's go out and slay the day. Write your story your own way. What's up, young authors, hey?
That's our theme song for What's Up, Young Authors.
Welcome to another episode of What's Up, Young Authors. I'm your host, Amelie Anastasia, and today we have a very special guest, John Masiulionis. Thank you for being here, John. You are the author of Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's Mission, a Hospice for Children. It's so nice to have you here.
Emily, I'm so excited to be here. I know that Little Forrest is sitting right next to me. Little Forrest, for those who don't know, is my little pride and joy, who just turned 2.5 years old. He's my Shih Tzu Maltese that came into my life just before Thanksgiving in 2002. So he's got a ringside seat for our conversation today. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you about your book today, Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's Mission, a Hospice for Children.
I'm excited to talk about and share the story with you, Emily. And again,
Thank you.
this really means a lot because this story is, and I'm also excited to hear your questions as well too. I get really, there's so much joy in my heart when I have the opportunity to not only share my story, but the creation of this book. I think that a really good way to kind of start our conversation is the importance of providing support for families, not only here in the United States, but around the world that are moving through grief. And not even just families who are moving through grief, but all of us move through grief. We've all been impacted by grief and loss and death in different ways, shapes, and forms. And especially when I have the opportunity to talk to kids like yourself about the story, I'm really this is a very meaningful conversation, Emily, because I feel that kids such as yourself have big, beautiful hearts, and they can really help us as adults to be able to move through life's most difficult challenge, which is death and grief and loss. So I'll be happy to share with you whatever it is that you would like to ask and know about the book or the creation of the book or everything else in between.
What first inspired you? What was the first pop-up that made you think about starting your children's book?
So many of, and you know this firsthand actually. So over the past 11 years, I have been very blessed and fortunate to run my own PR publicity company. And what that basically means for all of your younger viewers out there is that when there's children's authors that have their stories to share, and if they want to share not only their stories, but the release of their new children's books, their messages, their missions, and their purpose, I help them to do that, whether it be by facilitating television interviews, book signings, talks in schools and churches and libraries and community centers and big stages across the country and around the world. And so I've been helping wonderful authors such as you and your mom to share your stories. And it's interesting because over the years, I always felt that I had a story within me. But one of the things is that one of my struggles that I moved through in life is that I was the kind of person that would say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And there comes a point in life where the thing that you say that you're going to do, you have to do it. And really getting to the heart of your question, it really all began for me when my grandmother passed away. Being part Polish, we refer to our grandmothers as babcia, which is Polish for grandmother. And my grandmother was an instrumental force in my life. In many respects, she was my rock. In many respects, she was my safe space. And whenever I was moving through challenging moments in life, I know that she always believed in me. She always saw me through a lens of unconditional love. And in the summer of 2013, shortly after I was moving through some difficult health challenges, she passed away. So August 13th of 2013. And that's when things really began to change quite a bit. And some people will use the term spiritual awakening. where it really felt like my life was completely different, starting to become completely different at that point. But if I may briefly backtrack a little bit before my grandmother's passing to the spring of 2005, 20 years ago. So we'll put a pin in the thread about my grandmother and we'll make sure that we come back to that. But I visited San Diego, which is where I live. I'm so blessed and fortunate to live out here. I visited San Diego for the first time 20 years ago. So I actually used to work at Blockbuster Video. Before you were born, Amelie, we used to rent movies before they were streaming left and right. And so one of my dear friends, Dan Abraham, who I worked with at the time, his brother was one of the head scouts for the then San Diego Chargers, the NFL team that used to be in San Diego before they moved to Los Angeles. And he extended an amazing invitation. He said, why don't we take the time to visit my brother and spend some time with him and his partner out in San Diego, and also go to WrestleMania 21 at the now crypto.com arena. Now, if you're wondering why am I bringing up the world of professional wrestling, so prior to being a publicist for children's authors, I was very also blessed and fortunate to be the founder and host of the award-winning Monday Night Mayhem wrestling radio show. So just like you have a podcast, I had a radio show and podcast on my end of things. And so that was the first time I went on the trip, by the way. And it was the first time, I believe, no, it was not the first time I was on an airplane, but it was the first time that I was on the West Coast. I think it was either the second or third time that I'd ever been on an airplane. But it's very interesting because when I first came to San Diego, it literally felt like my soul was at peace. I remember that I had the most blissful night of sleep in my entire life. It was probably about 13 or 14 hours straight without waking up. And I feel that that told me something. So the reason why I share this, Amelie, is that one of the first places that Dan and his brother Dennis introduced me to was a beautiful place in San Diego called Children's Pool Beach. And for your listeners and viewers who are unfamiliar with Children's Pool Beach, it is where the La Jolla Cove meets the Pacific Ocean. And it's where San Diego's beloved seals and sea lions all spend time together. And you see the baby seals and the baby sea lions that are born every spring. And I remember there is almost a little walkway at Children's Pool Beach. If you've ever seen the movie Titanic, there's a scene where Leonardo DiCaprio's at the very end of the ship and he says, I'm the king of the world. And so there's almost a little version of that at Children's Pool Beach. And I remember Dan taking a photo of me on that little walkway right at Children's Pool Beach in La Jolla Cove. Now, I share this because I ended up coming back to Buffalo, which is where I was still living at the time, where I grew up, where I was born and raised. Whenever I was moving through challenging moments in my life, I always looked at that photo. I really didn't know why. So now we go back to shortly after my grandmother passing away. We fast forward 2 years afterwards, and I was given a cancer diagnosis. And it was a very challenging, would be an understatement, because I had no idea what was happening at that point in time. But I remember across the street from where my grandmother was buried, I should say across the street from the urologist's office, is where my grandmother and grandfather were buried. So literally after I received the diagnosis, I went right across the way and I started praying to my grandmother. And I knew, even though I would be moving through some further challenges thereafter, I knew that my grandmother would have my back and I knew that I would be okay. And so that is when, shortly after I took the time to heal, I really feel that that cancer diagnosis, Amelie, really gave me the opportunity to learn to love myself on a very deep level. And so shortly after I started healing, I started getting very clear visions of opening up and creating at some point in time in the future a children's hospice for terminally ill children in La Jolla, right near Children's Pool Beach. Now, for those of your younger listeners and viewers, a hospice is a place where people can go to pass away peacefully, and they're surrounded by their family, their loved ones, to really make the final moments of their lives as comfortable as possible so that they can die with peace and dignity and care and love. And so I made the decision of all times, Amelie, during the pandemic. I moved 2,500 miles across the country from Buffalo, New York to San Diego. Little Forrest was not with me as of yet, so I literally drove across the country by myself. And that was, I knew that this was connected to my mission and my life purpose. So the story is dedicated to my grandmother, my new children's book, Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's Mission, a Hospice for Children. And as we'll talk about further, there's a little boy in the story by the name of Zachary, and he is given a cancer diagnosis in the story. There are 4 earth angels that come to help him. He ends up speaking to God in a dream, and God shows little Zachary that there will be 4 earth angels to help him create and build a children's hospice, to raise the necessary money and funds for the hospice first, and then to create and build the hospice. And so this is how the story came to fruition, because I really feel that this has been such a beautiful mission that I've been on. I've been very grateful for the people that have come into my life, like you and your mom. And so I knew that I needed to get to San Diego, and I did. And then I needed to settle in San Diego, which I did. And then I needed to write the book and publish the book. And now I am beginning to take what is the next steps to bring the hospice to life, so that children here in San Diego, and if it's meant to be other children from across the country, can pass away peacefully and have a very touching experience before they die in the process. So I get really excited talking about this, even though it's a very difficult subject for many. It's so important, Amelie, that when people are moving through the biggest challenge of life, that they know that they're fully supported.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really beautiful, John.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Amelie.
Is there a meaning behind the title Walking Each Other Home for you? Is there a meaning, like a deep meaning?
That's actually a very good question, Amelie. So there is a very inspiring man who lived a beautiful life. He was a gifted spiritual teacher by the name of Ram Dass, Ramdass. And I remember a little over 10 years ago, this was probably around the time when my grandmother passed away or shortly thereafter, I was introduced to the work of Ram Dass. And one of his expressions that he would say regularly when he would be communicating with people, whenever he would be talking with them in person, whether he would be communicating with them through the internet, online, he would say the phrase, "We're all just walking each other home." And that was something that really, I had to grasp my hands around that as much as I could, because that is really the most profound statement that I'd ever heard in my life. Many people ask us every day, one of life's biggest questions, Amelie, is, why are we here? Why are we here? And there's so many people that come into our life, in and out of our life. If you add up all the people that come through our life, through the course of our lives, that's a lot of people. And so when I heard the phrase walking each other home, over time, it really became clear to me that through every experience that we have, whether it be with a loved one, a family member, a friend, and they could be deep, meaningful experiences if there's someone that comes into our life to save our life. And even those people that maybe we have some challenging moments with, whether it be an ex-wife or an ex-husband or an old boyfriend or an old girlfriend, even those troubling times, even those people and those experiences, they help to open our heart, and those people help to walk us home. So I envision, many people will refer to or have the vision of a spiritual staircase. And as we're moving forth in life, as we're born, we're at the bottom of the staircase because we're starting life. And with each passing moment, with each passing step, we're going up the ladder, up the staircase. And that literally, with those relationships, that we're literally walking home. So the analogy, the way in which I feel what it means to walk each other home is to really walk each other home back to heaven. Now, some people may not necessarily believe in heaven, and they may feel that this is all there is, so to speak. But even necessarily if it's a matter of the people that come into your life help to walk you back home to yourself. Because oftentimes in life we can feel sad or depressed or angry, and we might even try to transform into someone other than who we are. There's people in life and life in general that doesn't want us to be our authentic self. And so there's different interpretations. This is one of the coolest things about the phrase walking each other home, is that it can mean different things to different people. But I really feel that the two most key things, Amelie, are the spiritual staircase to heaven analogy, and then walking us home back to ourself. Because when we feel comfortable with who we are, when we feel that we can love openly and love deeply, and we can allow ourselves to be our most authentic self, that's when the magic happens. There's a reason, by the way, I know it might be cut off in the image here, but in my office, I have a purple sign that says, "This is where the magic happens." And so when I'm here in my office, when I am my authentic self, I remind myself that that's where the magic happens. The magic happens within all of us, Amelie. So again, the cool thing is that the phrase is also open to interpretation. I've had the good fortune of talking to kids and parents and families and educators across the country in a relatively short period of time since my book has been released since we're recording this just right before Easter in 2025. And the number of people that I hear different responses from about what it means to walk each other home. That's also one of the great things about children's books as well, too, is that children's books are open to different meaning, different interpretation. And so it's probably one of the most powerful statements that I've really ever seen. But I feel that it means more than a statement. It means more than words. It's really a feeling more than anything else.
That was really heartfelt. I just want you to know that. I really felt that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're able to see and feel that, Amelie. Thank you.
How did you manage to publish your book on your own? That must have been a lot of work.
Yes, it was. So I am very fortunate, as I mentioned, to do PR publicity work and have for the past 11 years. So there were certain skill sets that I acquired over time, certain what I refer to as tools in my toolbox. But I'll tell you, Amelie, there's a huge difference between promoting a book and writing and publishing a book. They're all important. If you decide to self-publish a book, they are all important. But to take the time through, because growing up, in many respects, I really felt that my creativity was not good enough. And I literally lived a life until I was a junior in high school, literally from third or fourth grade until junior year of high school. I felt in my heart and I believed that my creativity was not good enough. So one of the first things that I had to do, and this is one of the reasons why my book took about 7 or 8 years to come to fruition, I had to take the time to do the inner healing work and reconnect with my inner child and remind myself that my creativity is good enough, that I'm good enough. Because if we have a story to share, but we're still moving through childhood trauma or pain or suffering or wounding or anything like that, we can't share our story. And so it took the time, first things first, I took the time to be able to tend to that. And I'm very grateful and very appreciative that I did take the time to do that. that I still continue to take the time to do that each and every day. I remind myself when I wake up that I love myself, that I'm good enough just the way that I am, and that I'm loved and I'm special just the way that I am, that I will always be in the process. When it came to the publishing of the book, I had a choice. I could have said, am I going to self-publish or am I going to traditionally publish? Now, this story has wanted to come out for a long period of time. And for those who are familiar with the publishing industry, maybe even for those who are not familiar with the publishing industry, if you do land up getting traditionally published, it can take even longer. So it can take anywhere from a year and a half to 3+ years for a book when a story is officially approved by an agent and onboarded by a publisher. Then the story has to be illustrated. There's all the time that it takes thereafter for all of the bells and whistles to come to form and shape. And then also, I knew that this story needed to be shared and communicated in a very specific way. And we can talk a little bit more about the book overall shortly. And I knew that if I did decide to go down the route of a traditional publisher, it's not to say that I didn't believe that anyone would see the heart of the story, but I felt that this particular story would be best equipped so that I could have more of a say and more of a voice in the story to self-publish. So for many years, someone who has been a very big source of inspiration for me is the late Fred Rogers, who was the host of the long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And his memory, his legacy still lives on in many respects. It lives on through you, it lives on through your mom, it lives through me, while we're blazing our own individual, authentic, powerful trail. And so the reason why I'm mentioning Fred Rogers is because I said, well, if I'm going to open up my own publishing company, I want to give a little tip of the cap, so to speak, to Fred Rogers. And so hence Trolley Stop Publishing was born. But I will say that this has been a learning experience. Anyone who writes a book for the first time will tell you that it is a learning experience. Now, at the same point, I am very appreciative of the fact that there has been instrumental people on my author journey that helped to bring the book to form and shape and continue to help me in sharing my story. And it's important that I take the time, if it's okay with you, Emily, to name and to recognize those people that helped me with the publishing of my book, because it all goes to a conversation that I had with a dear colleague of mine by the name of Rebecca Yee Peters. She's an amazing author, illustrator, artist, animator, and she has a sister named Megan. And the two helped me to transform this story from just an idea in my heart and in my mind's eye into an actual story, to kind of flesh things out a little bit, work with them with that. And then Donna Sager Cowan, who I've known for a long period of time. She is an extraordinarily gifted author. She is also the founder, owner, and operator of DC Storyology, in addition to being the award-winning creator of the Superhero School series. Donna, for years, when I was helping her promote her books, she would always say, John, what about your book? What about your book? What about your book? And I would say, no, Don, I need to be focused on other people's books. And I did at the time, but she kept reminding me over and over and over again. And to my two editors, Brooke Ann Farrell, who lives on the other side of the world in Australia, and Allie Davis, who has been a guiding light in many respects, who really helped me to get my book to the finish line. And my illustrator, Roxana Barwinska, who I believe lives in Poland, if I'm not mistaken. And when I saw her artwork many years ago, actually even before the book was published, I knew that she had to be the one that could bring the story to form and to shape. And I had to trust that when we had a conversation that that everything would work itself out. And all of the people along the way, whether it be bookstore owners, whether it be educators, whether it be those within the grief community, whether it be those in the spiritual community, in churches across the country and around the world. Just from when we're recording this interview, I've had the opportunity thus far to do 2 wonderful story times and book signings out here in San Diego, where I live. And then also I just completed a national book tour stop in Pittsburgh, the home of Mr. Rogers, and had the opportunity to do several things while I was in Pittsburgh, including recording the 4-year anniversary celebration of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, which is one of the most popular children's book review programs for kids and parents and educators and librarians across the country and around the world. And I actually co-host the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast with David Newell, who, of course, you had the chance to meet David, albeit virtually. He played the beloved Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He is right here above my shoulder. And, of course, it's very fitting because your mom, Dr. Schaefer, was also joining us as a featured guest on the 4-year anniversary celebration of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. Cheap plug, as the expression goes, Amelie, but we had such an incredible time. So I share this because, again, every single person that comes to me and says, John, I want to help you share your story. They don't have to do that, but they do. And even just like you and the great podcast that you have and how you're inspiring and empowering children, adults, senior citizens, everywhere in between, when you and your mom said, hey, we'd like to put this together for you, like that really means a lot to me. And I want you to know that. I think it's really important to have that reminder of gratitude, Amelie, because we live in a world where we think that we're entitled.
Yeah.
We live in a world in which we think that everything is guaranteed and nothing is guaranteed. I went through a time in my life around a little over 10 years ago, give or take, when I almost had nothing on the surface. It could have looked like I bottomed out. And I remember my grandmother telling me these words through prayer and meditation. And she said, and I'll paraphrase them, be open to serving other people, because when you focus on the needs of service and giving back to other people, your needs will be taken care of. And I told her, I said, Babcia, again, remember being part Polish, I said, Babcia, I said, show me whom to serve, how to serve, when to serve, and where to serve, and in what capacity to serve. And I will be there. And I have not forgotten those words, that conversation that I had with her. That was approximately 10 years ago. And I think it's so important that even when things are going well in our life, that we take stock, that we remind ourselves of everything and everyone that we have to be grateful for, because nothing in life is guaranteed.
It seems like all of us could just take a moment. We could just use a moment to just thank our lucky stars and just reflect on how grateful we should be for all of our precious families and people and friends and things and houses and everything.
We really do have a lot to be grateful for. One of the beautiful things of life is that when we get to a certain place in life where things are going very well, this is also a reminder, and I'm so glad that you shared what you shared, because when we have the opportunity to get to a certain position in life or acquire certain things, whether it be wealth, affluence, abundance, joy, etc., it's important for us to pass that down and to also help people along our path. We can't hoard anything. It's long since been said there was a wonderful spiritual teacher and New York Times best-selling author. His name was Dr. Wayne Dyer, Amelie. If you and your mom have a conversation about Dr. Wayne Dyer, the whole conversation could probably go on for 24 hours. But I share this because I believe that Dr. Wayne Dyer, one of his famous quotes says, the most important suit that I own has no pockets, because wherever it is that I'm going next, I can't take anything with me. And so it's important that we take the time to give back, to be of service, so that every day, in essence, we fill our cup up. We literally every day we fill our cup up. But at the end of the day, we have to do our part to be an empty vessel, to serve as much as we can, still enjoying our lives, still taking care of ourselves, still loving ourselves, but still giving back and seeing how we can be of service to other people. And then we do that the next day, we do that the next day, and we do that the next day thereafter.
In the story, walking each other home, what I really enjoyed was I really thought that the earth angels that came to Zachary, I thought that was really touching. Can you tell us a little more about them?
I can, yes. It's these earth angels. Let me just briefly backtrack, Amelie. So earth angels, it's important, and this is a term just like walking each other home. Yeah, people have come to me since the book has been released, and even before then, because the term earth angels is a term that I've used for a long period of time in my life. An earth angel is someone that comes into our life, when we may be moving through either just a bad day, and they may come to lift our spirits, or it may be someone that comes into our life to help us when we're truly at our lowest moment. Sometimes people will use the term dark night of the soul, where it could seem like everything is going wrong. And I know for a fact that if it were not for these four earth angels, so these earth angels in the story are actually inspired by real life people in my life. But before I talk about those angels, it's important for all of us to remember that we all have earth angels, and they come in different ways, shapes, and forms. Our furry friends can be our earth angels. You obviously love pets, the work that you're doing with wildlife conservation and loving animals and just keeping that passion alive so that they know that they're loved, that they're safe, that they'll always be taken care of. So little Forrest is an earth angel in my life, but we all have earth angels, whether we classify ourselves as religious or spiritual or none of the above. And even if you're uncomfortable using the term angel, you can truly believe that there are people that are always coming through our life to help us, especially right when we need it. So the four earth angels in the story that God specifically chooses for Zachary to help him with his mission, there is Jane, the loving grandmother, and she reminds Zachary and readers of all ages that unconditional love can best be expressed by spending quality time with the ones that you love. And then there's Dennis, the Italian restaurant owner. Now, you've had the chance to meet Dennis because Dennis, the Italian restaurant owner, is inspired by the real life Dennis DiPaolo of Ilio DiPaolo's, which is a very well-known, beloved Italian restaurant in the Buffalo area in Western New York. And Dennis, the beloved Italian restaurant owner, reminds Zachary and all of us that unconditional love can best be expressed by cooking a meal for someone in need or someone who's hungry. And then there's Georgianne, the animal-loving storyteller. And she is inspired by my dear friend, Georgianne Irvine, who is the director of publishing for the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. She's one of the zoo's longest tenured employees. She's been with the zoo for nearly 50 years. She is the award-winning creator of the zoo's Hope and Inspiration collection. So Amelie, Georgianne has chronicled the journey of many of the animals at the zoo over the years and has written stories sharing their challenges and how they overcame those challenges to get through to the other side. So one of my favorite stories in the Hope and Collection, or the Hope and Inspiration series, is a story called Mosi Musa, which is about a baby monkey who was growing up and whose mom unfortunately abandoned him. But then his grandmother came in, swooped in, and saved the day. And so Georgianne reminds Zachary, she teaches Zachary, she reminds all of us that unconditional love can look like, sound like, and feel like helping children to connect to their creativity, their imagination, and their inner spark. And then lastly, there is Patrick, the Reiki master. Now, Patrick was a practitioner of mine for several years and also a good friend as well, too. And in the story, Patrick reminds and teaches Zachary, and he reminds all of us that unconditional love can be as simple as lifting someone up when they feel down. So just as I mentioned how walking each other home can mean different things to different people, well, so can an earth angel in many respects, and so can unconditional love. Unconditional love doesn't have to be one specific thing. And so even though the story is a very sad story, and again, Zachary does have a cancer that is terminal, and unfortunately he does pass away at the end of the story, but he learns about unconditional love along the way, and he's able to fulfill his mission. And this is one of the other big takeaways about the story, Amelie, is the fact that we all have skills, we all have gifts, and we all have talents. We are all here for a purpose. We're here to love life. We're here to have amazing experiences and enjoy all the food and see all the sights. I actually, Amelie, I don't know if your mom had the chance to tell you this, but the first trip that I will be taking to outside of the United States will be to Prague in the Czech Republic. And so that is something that, when we're here in life, we want to travel and see the sights and see the world. And I look forward to being in Prague. You've got a very special connection to Prague as well, too. But I share this because it's interesting. We're just recording this interview in real time the day after Tax Day. Now, there's a reason why I bring this up, because many people, you maybe have heard this expression, you probably heard your family share this expression. There are some people that feel that we're here to pay taxes and die. That is not why we're here. We have a mission, we have a purpose to be able to fulfill, and we all have skills and gifts and talents. So even though Zachary has a terminal illness, he's given a mission and he believes in himself. He has faith in himself, no matter how he's feeling, what he's moving through, that he can fulfill this mission. And so even though the story is about death and grief and loss, and even at the very beginning, it talks to young readers and readers of all ages, it doesn't sugarcoat anything. At the very beginning of the story, it says that Zachary has a terminal illness and that the doctors are still going to try to see what they can do to make him feel better. But the story has many heartfelt messages. It's kind of like the story within the story. And so this has been one of the reasons why people have an affinity for the story as well, because it's not just a super sad story in the process. There is definitely meaningful life lessons and takeaways that whether it be children or us as adults can take away from the story. I know that little Forrest agrees with me. Don't mind him. He's just being his little lovable self.
As a publicist, do you have any tips for other people who want to start their own children's books?
I do. And the first thing that comes to mind, Amelie, is start. Wherever you are, start. If we go back to the beginning of our conversation and you say, and there's someone like me who used the phrase, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna start writing. I'm gonna bring this book to fruition. It's gonna happen. Even if you take the time and you write down some ideas in a journal or a notebook, that's starting somewhere, because everything is not in here. One of the things that is really cool about writing is that I really feel that if there's something that you want to write that's in your mind's eye, in your heart, and you write it, it's literally expressing itself through you. So start wherever you are, even if it doesn't look perfect, even if it looks stupid, even if it looks horrible. Try not to be judgmental. Just know the fact that you're doing your part to get those ideas out. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. Set tangible and realistic goals. There's an expression, Amelie, Rome was not built in a day. And we can tend to be our own worst critics. We can really be very hard on ourselves. So it took me almost from beginning to end with saying I'm first going to write this book. It took me about 7 or 8 years. But once I finally said I'm going to dedicate the time to this, it took about 1.5 years, give or take. So set realistic goals and expectations. If you want to have your book published by a certain date, start taking those necessary next steps, but be open to how things flow along the way. So I just share this briefly because I remember my illustrator was supposed to have provided me with all of the files for my book right before Thanksgiving, the end of November 2024. And I didn't receive the files until like the second week of January. So that kind of created a little minor cascading effect, so to speak. I wasn't necessarily able to have the pre-launch that I was hoping for, but I still was able to have a really good pre-launch. So I share the importance of setting realistic expectations and goals. There are times if you have a really good story and if you can have an agent get the story where you work with an agent, I've seen authors where their first story has become traditionally published. So that can happen. But if you do decide, especially to self publish, set realistic goals and expectations because you want to be mindful of taking care of yourself, taking care of your other commitments and your other responsibilities. And you don't want to shirk those responsibilities just to be able to focus 100% on your book. It'll take the time that it's meant to. The third thing that comes to mind is surround yourself with the right people. It's long since been said that you are who you, it's, I'll paraphrase the expression, you are who you surround, like the top 5 people that are in your life, you're kind of a reflection of who you hang out with. Support yourself with people who will inspire you, who will empower you, who will also light a fire under your butt. Because sometimes if you're feeling a little bit sluggish, or if you're feeling complacent, or if you're going to procrastinate, you want to have people that are going to keep you on your toes while also lifting you up and inspiring yourself along the way. And the last thing that comes to mind is have fun, especially if you're writing a children's book, right? Remember what I said, how in life we're not here to just pay taxes and die. Enjoy the process, enjoy the frustration, enjoy the joy, and everything else in between. And the last thing that I'll mention is believe in yourself and believe in your story, because every one of us has a story to share. Whether we've moved through a cancer diagnosis and healed ourselves from cancer, whether we moved through a divorce, whether we've suffered grief and loss, like me with the loss of my grandmother, we've all overcome many things. We've all moved through challenges. Your story has inherent worth and value to someone else. So that person who is, let's say, going through the cancer now, or going through the divorce now, or the financial loss that you went through previously, you can help that person or those people wherever they are on their path right now. So I like to try to keep things simple, Amelie. I'm not going to necessarily give like super scientific advice. There are other tangible things that I can recommend, but these are the ones that I feel that will help you stay on point and on purpose and stay committed to the goal, the vision that you have of bringing your book to life.
Thank you so much, John. So, where can we find your books?
Well, I appreciate you asking that. So your viewers and your listeners can head over to my official website, which is johnmasiulionis.com. I always like to say the first name makes up for the last name, just because the first name's shorter, the last name's a little bit longer. If you also go over to amazon.com, if you go to barnesandnoble.com, any online retailer, Books A Million, Walmart, bookshop.org, you will find both the softcover / paperback and the hardcover version of Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's Mission, a Hospice for Children. While on Amazon, one of the many things that you can do, one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for me, in addition to all children's authors, like you and like your mom, the 5-star reviews on Amazon are essential. Because when you leave a 5-star review, it doesn't take much long of a period of time to be able to do that. It doesn't cost any money to leave your favorite author or a new author whose work that you're learning about for the first time. It doesn't take much to leave that 5-star review, because that reminds us that we're doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, and educators. And as I like to say, those who love great children's books. And then also, if you head on over to your favorite local library or your favorite children's or independent bookstore, if you don't see them stocking their copies of Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's Mission, a Hospice for Children, make that kind recommendation. One of the things being self-published is that it does take a little bit of time to get the word out. When you're not a celebrity children's author or a traditionally published author, it can take time for people to learn about your story. So this is why, again, if you head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, make that recommendation. Let them know that Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's Mission, a Hospice for Children needs to be stocked in their library, in their bookstore, because as I say every day, Amelie, we are all here to help walk home the children of the world.
Thank you so much, John, for being on this very, very special episode of What's Up, Young Authors. I'm your host, Amelie Anastasia, who has cried almost 3 times this time. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate it.